because I have a lot of leaders, when I first start organizing, that tell me I'm undocumented, I have no rights in this country. I have no right to go to my legislator and tell them that they should pass driver's license. And the truth is that that's false. You're paying their salary. You actually have a lot of right. Because everything that any US citizen pays for in this country, undocumented people pay for that too. So we don't get any Medicaid, we don't get any government help, we can't get food stamps, you don't get any government housing, none of that stuff. You will not have a retirement, but you're putting money into the system all your life. And there's certain people, a lot of people that don't even want to talk about this, and I think that's part of what I realized in my organizing work is the more open we are as undocumented people with everyone who's not, the more people will start understanding what's really happening. And my mom came into this country undocumented. Her and my dad brought us 3 girls undocumented into the country. And we lived in Illinois. And for a big amount of years, they worked 3 jobs. So we would get up in the morning, they would get up in the morning, work a factory job. Then they would get off work. My dad would go do landscape. And then at night, all 3 of us, even me I was 2 when I got here. They would take me and my sisters that were teens at that time to go clean 3 offices at midnight. And then my sisters had to go to school. And then they would repeat that. They did that for a decade. And we were able to buy a house and everything, and all this jobs and everything being undocumented. Unfortunately, when I was 9, my parents separated, my mom became a single mother. And in that time, we lived in this town called Waukegan, and the police force, so Waukegan is like little Mexico, okay? Everyone there is, it's crazy how many people there are brown, And the police force knew that the majority of the people there were living undocumented. So they raised up their prices in the impound, and they would go and target people, stop them, know that they didn't have a driver's license, take away their car, and then you would have to go pay the city to take your car out. And they would do this on a daily basis. Or they would deport you. There was a lot of raids back then when I was growing up. And for my mom, that was a single mom, that by then she had lost her factory job because of NAFTA, which is funny, but it's true. And she started doing sales because she couldn't find a job. E-Verify had happened by then, and E-Verify was a system that was created to verify if your social security number was real. So a lot of jobs in Waukegan and Illinois started putting that system in place, and it was crazy how many people lost their jobs that were undocumented. So she started doing sales because they wouldn't check her social security that way. Point is, she would drive a lot, and they would stop her a lot. And we really didn't have that much money, so the cars that she had didn't even cost to take them out of the impound, because taking them out of the impound costed more than our car. So we lost our car like 3 times, and she lost her job every single time, and then in the end we became homeless. And for that winter, we became homeless in the winter. And she didn't want to go and tell anyone for help because she was scared that she was undocumented and they were going to deport her and leave us here. And she couldn't get any government help. She couldn't go ask for housing or food stamps or anything. So we had a family friend that their house had been foreclosed on them, and they knew the house was vacant. So they said, break into the house and stay there. So we did, and the house had only running water, it had no heat, nothing. And my sister, for that winter, took showers with that water, and I did too. I tried to block off that memory. And we did that until she was able to pick herself up again, because we couldn't ask for any help. And she spent, after that, she picked herself up, but not really. It wasn't like she got a better job or she was able to get a license or anything like that. It just became worse. And then she actually decided to take us back to Mexico because she was alone here and she didn't have any help. So I had lived all my life here. I had no memory of Mexico, and she takes us back. And to her surprise, she was already in her late 30s. No one would hire her. Because over there, once you reach a certain age without having any record of jobs, no one gives you a job. If you're old in Mexico, you don't get a job. That's actually a requirement. You have to say how old you are, and they do care. And she realized, like, my sisters were here, they were already older, and she wasn't going to see her daughters ever again because they weren't documented. And she said, we have to go back because there's no future for you here. So we hired coyotes and we went to the border and we crossed the border, undocumented. And at that time I was 14. And I remember that was the first time I realized there's something wrong here. Because I was crossing the border and I was almost drowning. And I was like, I'm 14. My friends are at the mall. And then we came back to the same thing. She couldn't find a job. I got a job at 14 to help her pay rent. And we still couldn't pay rent. And my life at that age was just a cycle of her life. That's what it became. Getting a job without any documentation, getting paid less because they know you're not documented, driving without a driver's license, and putting up with it, and not being able to go to school. Because back then, you also couldn't go to school if you didn't have a social security number. It didn't matter how great of a student you were. And I couldn't go back to Mexico because I didn't know anything about Mexico. And so part of what I realized at a really young age is that there wasn't actually a lot of options for me. But we were better off here because we had nothing over there at that time. And that's actually a big part of the reason why I do this work. And that's actually a big part of my base. Most of my base are women in their late 30s and 40s that have 3 to 5 children and aren't documented. And lost their houses to foreclosure when the housing crisis came, and now live in trailer homes where their rights are being abused every day because the trailer homes don't care, and they work constantly. They get no benefits, no nothing. I had a leader that was going to come here today, and she works from the moment the sun rises until it ends. Her appendix, is that how you say appendix? Ruptured at work, and she for days had been telling her employer, hey, I don't feel good, my stomach hurts, can I just go to the doctor? Can I just go to the doctor? No, no, no. And then one day it ruptures at work. She didn't even know it ruptured. She literally told her employer, I'm leaving, walked out, drove and stopped all the way to her house because she couldn't stand the pain, got home. Her husband then took her to the emergency room, and they were like, we can't believe you're like standing right now. It had affected all her stomach already. She had to get emergency surgery. And then she went home after 2 weeks of being hospitalized with a tube still in her stomach. And when she went back to work, they never paid her for any of that. Nothing. She's one of the leaders that drives our driver's license campaign. And she couldn't be here tonight because she works really late. So it's not like, the reason I tell my mom's story, my story, is because it's not isolate, right? That's a reality for everyone. A lot of people had questions in the introductory trainings about what different statuses people have. Now, that's a big, broad question, and who qualifies them is big and broad. All immigration cases are different. It's not like you fit into like a place, right? And you're like, oh, if you're this and this and this, you go here. That's really actually not how it works. But I wanted to give you guys something to work with. So there's different kinds of residencies, so green cards that people can qualify for, and then that can turn into a citizenship after a certain number of years and qualifications. So some of those are family petitions. So that's probably like sometimes people can get married and their spouse can apply for them. You have children that are under 21 and you can apply for them. Or your children, once they turn 21, can apply for you. These are not just like really specific. It's because there are people that do marry a U.S. citizen and can't legalize anyway. So it's case by case. It's not just, oh, I'm gonna go marry someone and then tomorrow I'll be a citizen. It doesn't work that way. There's a legal process, there's years, there's money, there's a lot that goes into it. But that's kind of, available. There's employee visas, like I said, so if you can, you take them out because your work wants you to work here and things like that. And some of those, not all, can turn into you being a resident at some time, and then from being a resident to a citizen, sometimes, not all though. Then there's VAWA, that later on gave, opened the door to the U visa. So VAWA started because of domestic violence towards women. So it was a visa that women that were suffering domestic violence by U.S. citizens here that could apply for this visa. So a lot of times, women would marry and their spouse would be like, right, obviously abusing them, and then they would be like, you can't tell the cops because you're undocumented. Well, then they created VAWA. And then from there, the U visa started, which the U visa covers any kind of like criminal act towards you. So it could be verbal or physical. So maybe if you're in the street and someone comes and robs you and then beats you up, you could actually apply for U.S. visa. Or if you're going through any kind of violence at home, or people are threatening you because of your status. So it was created so people wouldn't be afraid to call the cops when something had happened, right? That was wrong. Now, not everyone qualifies for that too. It's not like you're just gonna go and someone's gonna punch you and then you qualify. A lot of times you have to have like that you win after that person. So there was like a legal process that you were like, this person did this to me, and you tried to get them prosecuted and stuff like that. And sometimes that's really good because, for example, if your child suffered this abuse, the U visa could qualify all of the family if the child was underage. Or vice versa, if the parent had children that were underage and the mother suffered that abuse, or the dad, then their children could qualify for the U visa. And you qualify for, you apply for the visa, then you get your residency after a certain amount of years, and then after a certain amount of years, you apply for U.S. citizenship. Not everyone qualifies for it. Then there's asylum. The asylum is once you're already here, but you actually want to apply for asylum because you can't go back. Religious workers, so clergy, priests, stuff like that. Some of them, I guess there's a pathway to them also becoming citizens. Investors. So if you're really rich and you have a company and you actually employ people in the U.S., also pathway to citizenship. And then there's this thing called the diversity visa lottery, which I actually did not know this existed. Which there's a lottery that happens, and they give visas to people that from countries that normally don't migrate to the U.S. And like people have applied for them, and then they just pick you like a lottery, literally. It's crazy. I don't know. These are all things that could potentially become a pathway to citizenship for people. Now, does everyone qualify for it? No. And then so a lot of people are like, what is Trump? Yes, question?
What about refugees and deferred action?
Yes, I'm gonna talk about deferred action. And refugees, it could go back to the humanitarian visa that I talked about you applying from the country, or if not, they fit into asylum, which they try to apply from here. But they have to prove, these people have to prove their life is actually in danger. So the question was that when the IRS finds you and sends you this request to get an I-10 number, do you become documented? No, it has nothing to do with documentation. That they specify that number is only so you can go and do your taxes every year, but that's it.